The manhwa kicks off with the main character explaining that 3 days have passed since the strange phenomenon that pulled him into the novel he wrote. It's not just a dream or a random event, it's possession, something straight out of a webtoon, except now he's living it firsthand. Despite the bizarre situation, he's still in his own body. He rubs his eyes furiously, hoping to snap out of it, but the glowing character information screen hovering in front of him refuses to disappear. We learn his name, Larson Maiden. He's now living as a character from his novel, a minor supporting character destined for tragedy. In 9 years, his own brothers are set to kill him. On the first day, Larson wakes up in a cold sweat, screaming. A maid rushes in, trembling, and immediately drops to her knees, apologizing as if her life depends on it. She starts bashing her head into the floor, claiming she's committed a crime worthy of death. Confused and disoriented, Larson stares at her, wondering who she is. She doesn't look Korean or Western, so he demands to know where he is. His sudden movement frightens her, and she panics, begging him not to hit her. Before he can calm her down, she faints. All he did was stand up. The second day begins with Larson finally accepting that his name is no longer Cha Sung-min. He meets a boy named Hampton, who dutifully records his daily activities. When Larson questions him about this odd practice, Hampton nervously explains that in noble families, every movement of their heirs is documented starting from age 14. Larson watches him fumble, and Hampton, clearly overwhelmed, spills ink all over the logbook. Apologizing profusely, Hampton scrambles to clean up the mess, but Larson's body moves on its own. He kicks the boy in the face. It's not his intention, but it feels like his body has its own reflexes. As the day progresses, Larson starts recovering memories of his new life. At 4 years old, he beat the servants with a toy stick. Hampton, as it turns out, was one of his victims. At 5, he discovered he was born to a maidservant and began resenting his status. By 7, his cruelty peaked. He spat in his mother's face, showing her no respect. His terrible behavior didn't stop there. At 8, he attacked a little girl named Rosalind, the 6-year-old daughter of a prominent martial arts family, with a stick. He even bragged about it afterward. This stunt forced his father to bow and apologize to her influential family. Shortly after, Larson was banished to a remote mansion. Even now, his memories revealed just how horrible a person Larson was. Recently, he threw a tantrum over chocolate. The odd thing is, Larson's new memories don't match what Cha Sung-min originally wrote. He never gave this much depth to Larson's backstory, and yet here it all is, filling in gaps he never intended. By the 3rd day, Larson accepts the truth. This is his new reality. He reflects on his novel's plot. Larson was a minor character, with little detail about his looks or abilities. The readers barely noticed him, and he was never described as having any exceptional traits. He was supposed to die at 17. However, one trait stands out: his untapped talent for martial arts. Though it was never used in the story, it exists now, which might be his saving grace. Determined to survive, Larson starts planning. He has 8 years until his brothers kill him, and in the meantime, he can work on creating a future. But there's a bigger problem: the novel's protagonist, Cassin Shade. Cassin is destined to clash with the Maiden family because of a dark secret. Years ago, the Maidens accidentally killed the firstborn son of the Shade family, sparking a feud that spiraled into war. Since the novel's title revolves around the Shades, they inevitably win, and the Maiden family is destroyed. Larson knows the odds are stacked against him, but he also has one advantage: he's the creator of this world. He knows every plot twist, every moment of plot armor the protagonist has, and he plans to use all of it to his benefit. For now, he resolves to live better than his original self ever could. After all, he's only got one life to live, and with his golden bloodline and martial arts talent, he might just find a way to survive. If he can deal with the fact that he's a walking rat with a ticking clock, there's still a chance to turn things around. The scene continues with Larson noticing the glowing status window again. This time, it reveals that he's activated something called the Heavenly Eye. Larson freezes, shocked. That ability belongs to Cassin, the protagonist of his novel. If he has this power, it means the status window he's seeing is the Heavenly Eye. But why would he, a supporting character, possess such a crucial ability? He explains that Cassin's Heavenly Eye is an overpowered skill in the story, a key feature in what he calls a Munchkin min-maxer fantasy novel. Kassan wasn't just strong, he had the power to obliterate the planet and, if he felt like it, the universe too. Larsen's unease grows as he recalls that this same power is what eventually led to the destruction of the Maiden family. Looking down, Larsen notices a faint ring around his heart, something he describes as the first circle. In his story, circles are a manifestation of mana gathered around the heart, used as fuel for magic. Normally, it takes immense time and effort to achieve even the first circle, and someone like Larsen, who never trained in magic, shouldn't have it. Yet here it is, fully formed, seemingly on its own. A knock on the door interrupts his thoughts. He assumes it's Hira, and his suspicions are confirmed when the maid enters, kneeling immediately. The sight reminds Larsen of the suffocating rules he set up for his servants. Annoyed by his past self's strictness, he tells her she should kneel only when necessary. As he looks at her, another status window appears, and Larsen is stunned to see that Hira has a talent for assassination. This makes no sense. He never wrote this detail into her character. Someone must have planted her as an assassin, even in this remote mansion. Larsen realizes the implications. His life is still in danger. He forces himself to smile, knowing that if Hira senses his fear or sees an opening, she might strike. Despite his suspicions, the Heavenly Eye tells him her trembling and tears are real, though he's not entirely convinced. To buy time, he orders her to fetch him some chocolates and leave him alone. Outside the room, Hira hesitates, sensing something unusual. She's noticed a shift in Larsen over the past few days. His demeanor feels entirely different, almost like he's a new person. She floats down the hallway, her movements deliberate, like a predator silently observing its prey. Back in the room, Larsen gathers his thoughts. His banishment to this mansion has all but destroyed his chances of being a successor, leaving him at the bottom of the family hierarchy. Even so, his every move is still monitored. The Maiden family, in his own story, plays the role of villains, and Larsen decides to change his approach. To survive, he'll behave like a decent person, at least on the surface. With the Heavenly Eye and his knowledge of the story's future, he knows where crucial artifacts are located. If he plays his cards right, he might just survive the succession war. A moment later, Hira returns, apologizing for failing to find the chocolate. As she kneels again, claiming she's committed a crime worthy of death, Larsen cuts her off mid-sentence. Forcing himself to stay in character, he coldly tells her to leave. The maid, stunned by his uncharacteristic indifference, leaves the room, questioning what just happened. This isn't the same Larsen who would normally throw a fit over chocolate. She resolves to observe him more closely before reporting anything unusual. The story jumps ahead 1 week. Larsen orders Hampton to prepare for something, catching the boy off guard. "What for?" Hampton asks nervously. Larsen smirks, repeating his command. They're going to the training building. Over the past week, Larsen has thought hard about his situation. If he's going to survive, he must participate in the succession war, and that means training his body and mastering the powers he's gained. Hampton is shocked by the change. Larsen, who used to beat him for minor mistakes, now seems focused and driven. It's not just fear anymore. There's a determination in Larsen's eyes that's hard to ignore. Hampton recalls that he too has a talent. Poison. A talent he'd likely developed to protect himself from Larsen's unpredictable wrath. In noble families, aides like Hampton are called shadows, devoted servants who assist their masters. Despite everything, Hampton decides to trust Larsen and follow him. At the training building, Hampton's heart aches as he watches others ridicule Larsen from afar. He knows Larsen has done terrible things, but a small part of him hopes this sudden change is real. For now, Hampton chooses to believe in the possibility of redemption. As Larsen steps into the training facility, he's immediately struck by its modern design, a surprising feature in this fantasy world. He mutters to himself that his half-baked world building must have left some oddities, but at least it's comforting to see something familiar. Inside, he meets Noah, the administrator of the facility's leaf building. Noah introduces himself politely, but Larsen greets him with an awkward air, remembering that he had slapped Noah a year ago for not bowing low enough. What annoys Larsen more is that Noah doesn't seem to remember him at all. Curious, Larsen tries to analyze Noah with his heavenly eye, but it fails. That can only mean one thing: Noah is strong. Swallowing his pride, Larsen decides to approach him with respect. Larsen asks for advice on what kind of training he should begin with, and requests a monster suitable for his age. Noah asks his age, and when Larson answers, a sly smile crosses Noah's face. Holding a grudge from the past, Noah suggests a harmless mushroom monster, clearly intending to set Larson up for failure. Larson, oblivious to Noah's motives, agrees to the suggestion. After all, if an unremarkable sixth son, someone barely mentioned in the story, could kill it, how hard could it be? While waiting, Larson focuses on the mana swirling around his heart. To his amazement, he realizes his talent lies in magic combat, and he's already grasping how to use it instinctively. Before long, Noah tells him the preparation is complete. Larson steps into a simulation room resembling a dense mushroom forest. As the door shuts behind him, Noah smirks. He plans to use this moment to humiliate Larson, finally settling the score for the slap a year ago. Inside the forest, Larson spots the mushroom monster. It's a tiny, bouncing creature that looks anything but threatening. Confident, Larson charges his fist with mana, watching as a status window pops up, confirming that his magic combat technique has activated. He feels the magic circle inside him shift as his body prepares for the fight. Outside, Noah watches intently, recalling his own past as a magic prodigy before joining the Maiden family. Today, he'll have his revenge. What Larson doesn't know is that this particular mushroom monster is at the highest difficulty level. Its physical resistance makes it almost impervious to low-level attacks, and Larson's technique lacks elemental attributes, meaning he shouldn't stand a chance. But as Noah watches, his smirk fades into shock. Larson's glowing fist punches straight through the monster, destroying it in one blow. Larson is just as surprised. "That was easy," he mutters, as a status window updates his technique. He feels a surge of power in his heart, noting a new ability called weight utilization has been imprinted on his circle. Meanwhile, Noah is struggling to process what he just witnessed. Larson's technique, though pure magic-based, somehow delivered devastating physical damage, something that shouldn't be possible against a physically resistant monster. Trying to regain his composure, Noah tells Larson he'll increase the difficulty. Larson, still absorbing what just happened, hesitates. He admits he's running low on mana but agrees, curious about the challenge. Noah assures him it won't be much harder, though secretly he's gathering information for his report. He tells himself he'll stop the training if it becomes dangerous. A second mushroom monster appears, this one slightly different in color. Larson braces himself as the creature attacks with sudden speed. He narrowly dodges and blocks its follow-up strike. Commenting on its predictable movements, Larson decides to use his abilities. He grabs the monster, imbuing his hand with mana. Though he's running low, he hits it anyway. Time seems to slow as he lands the blow, his heavenly eye deactivating in the process. He makes a mental note to analyze what just happened once he's recharged his mana. Outside the simulation, Hampton watches in awe. He wonders if Larson has secretly been training, as his movements seem far too refined for someone untrained. Even Noah is stunned, questioning how Larson could display such strength before undergoing his 10th-year ceremony, a milestone that typically unlocks a successor's full potential. Hampton, overcome with emotion, believes Larson must have been training in secret. Tears well up as he rushes forward and hugs him. Taken aback by the sudden attention, Larson realizes he's caused a scene and decides to fake faint to avoid further scrutiny. Noah quickly orders Hampton to fetch a healing mage. The healer arrives, surprised to learn it's the 7th son, not the 6th, who needs assistance. Examining Larson, the mage concludes that if his injuries are from a technique's side effects, they'll be difficult to heal. Deciding to go through the motions, the mage casts a healing spell, but expects no results. To his shock, Larson opens his eyes and thanks him. The room falls silent. Everyone stares, stunned by Larson's uncharacteristic gratitude. Noah, Hampton, and even the healer can't believe what they're seeing. The scene opens with Hira out of breath, bringing chocolates to Larson. She apologizes nervously, saying she could only find 2. Larson reassures her it's fine and tells her to leave them and go. He doesn't want to keep tormenting her and adds that he's tired from training. Hira exits the room, visibly shocked when Hampton mentions that Larson had gone to train earlier. Back in his room, Larson eats the chocolates, noting he doesn't normally enjoy them, but finds these oddly comforting. As he eats, he activates his heavenly eye and notices something strange. The chocolate's energy is spreading through his body. To his surprise, the chocolates are replenishing his mana. He reflects on how mages in this world usually have to endure harsh conditions to absorb mana from their surroundings, yet he's gaining it effortlessly. This discovery hints at a unique constitution he wasn't aware of, something he hadn't written into Larson's character. However, the side effect of this free mana seems to be weight gain. He wonders what connection this has to his newly gained flow slowly talent. A knock interrupts his thoughts. The door opens to reveal Carlin, Larson's older brother, whose rude demeanor instantly puts Larson on edge. Carlin, whom Larson fears deeply, wastes no time asserting dominance. He sneers, demanding Larson crawl and kneel like a bug. Suddenly, Larson's flow, slowly talent activates, allowing him to see Carlin swing in slow motion. Testing his newfound ability, Larson deflects the attack, sending Carlin's weapon flying. This infuriates Carlin, who screams threats and begins channeling mana, forming water around his fist. Larson notes droplets forming on Carlin's body and quickly disrupts the water formations before they can fully materialize. In a flash, Larson appears behind Carlin, then back in front, delivering a powerful blow to his stomach. Carlin coughs up blood and collapses, groaning in pain. Panicking, Larson shouts for Hampton to fetch a healing mage. When Hampton arrives, Larson repeats the order urgently, and Hampton rushes off. Larson takes a moment to reflect. He recognizes he may have gone too far, but also learned an effective method for dealing with mages. The next day, Hira and Hampton discuss the incident. Hira is stunned to hear that Larson defeated Carlin. Hampton, looking serious, reveals he's actually Larson's shadow. Hira isn't surprised, stating that everyone except Larson knows this. Hampton points out that she, too, is not an ordinary maid. They both acknowledge each other's unique positions, and Hampton asks if she still thinks Larson is just a scoundrel. Hira brushes off the question, urging him to keep talking. Hampton theorizes that Larson's behavior might be tied to the upcoming ceremony. He speculates that Larson has been hiding his abilities all this time. He explains that Larson's mastery of the first circle couldn't have developed overnight, and that Larson's previous behavior may have been an act to stay under the radar. He insists that Larson's sudden changes show a future worth following. If Larson dies, both he and Hira will likely be abandoned. Hampton proposes they work together to ensure Larson survives. Hira agrees to consider his points if Larson visits the library, explaining that it's critical for maiden family members in the succession war to study there and develop strategies. The story shifts to Larson outside the library, marveling at its immense size. He wonders how many books it holds when a mysterious voice answers. Around 200,000. Startled, Larson looks around and sees a rainbow-colored aura. From it, a woman appears and introduces herself as Evian, the librarian. Larson is intrigued but wary of Evian. He activates his heavenly eye to analyze her and learns her real name is Larvian, a name he recognizes immediately. She introduces herself formally, and Larson recalls her infamous reputation. Larvian is one of the highest-ranking mages, known for slaughtering a lord and his knights, turning them into icicles, and freezing their entire castle. Her actions in the future lead to disaster, making her a wanted criminal. Larson can't hide his surprise. Why would someone like her be working as a librarian? And why is she just standing there, staring at him? The scene begins with Evian offering Larson some tea, suggesting black tea specifically. Larson agrees, even though he doesn't like it, figuring it's better to play along. As she disappears to prepare it, he reflects on how lucky he is that this is his first time in the library. Who knows what chaos the original Larson might have caused here. When Evian returns, she asks why he's here. Larson requests a basic book on mana cultivation. She raises an eyebrow, questioning why he'd need something so elementary. Larson responds that it's better to be safe than sorry, a phrase that seems to confuse her. She retrieves the book using magic, floating it over to him effortlessly. Larson takes it and dismisses her, saying he'll handle things from here. Alone with the book, Larson dives in. It describes mana as the fundamental energy present in all of nature. To become a mage, one must first form a ring of mana, a process that requires understanding complex equations. Larson quickly finds himself lost in the technical jargon. For a basic book, this feels more like advanced quantum physics. He activates his heavenly eye to make sense of it, which shows a completion rate of 5%. This ability, while powerful, highlights his current struggle. It's no match for Cassan's mastery. Still, Larson is amazed at how quickly the heavenly eye is processing the information, and he wonders what will happen when it reaches 100%. Satisfied for now, he decides to stop and focus on his mana issues another day. The scene shifts back to the mansion. where Hampton informs Larson of a visitor. Lady Soso, his mother. Larson is stunned. Her sudden appearance feels unexpected, and it stirs up memories of his past life. He recalls how much he missed his own mother, especially during her final days in the hospital. Emotion wells up as he notices how much Lady Soso resembles her. However, his joy is tempered by concern. He spots the early signs of the blue dot illness, a mysterious and incurable disease marked by 3 blue dots. She currently has only one. As they sit down for tea, Larson struggles with guilt, remembering how the original Larson treated her. Tentatively, he calls out to her, unsure how to start. Watching from the sidelines, Hira wonders if Larson's kind demeanor is just another act. Then, to everyone's shock, Larson apologizes. His voice trembles as he admits his past mistakes and says he's come to his senses. Lady Soso, equally shocked, responds cautiously, her voice cracking as she simply says, "Is that so?" Larson continues, pouring out his regrets, but she remains guarded, giving short, polite answers. Her tone reveals her hesitance. Years of abuse have made her wary of his sudden change. Before leaving, she excuses herself, claiming she has work to do, though Larson knows it's a lie. She hasn't been a maidservant for a long time. Alone, Larson reflects on the blue dot illness. Once 3 dots appear, the disease becomes incurable. He vows to find a way to help her while she still has a chance. Outside the room, Lady Soso breaks down in tears. She wonders why she's crying on what should be a happy day. Her son, for the first time, has called her mother. Later, Larson stops her before she leaves and asks if she'd be willing to spend an hour with him every day. He suggests they drink tea together, knowing the tea has potential healing properties that could help with her illness. Touched by his sincerity, she agrees. Larson silently wishes for her health, determined to protect her. That night, Lady Soso lies awake, wondering if this is all just a dream. Her son's transformation feels too good to be true. She calls out to an unseen presence, sharing what happened and questioning if someone else is listening. A nearby candle flickers in response. The next day, Larson calls Hira for a private conversation. Nervous, she wonders if he's discovered her secret identity or plans to give her an assassination order. To her surprise, he simply asks for more of the special chocolate. Relieved but slightly irritated, she waits for him to say something important, only for him to request more sweets. Disappointed, she leaves. An hour later, Larson stares at a literal mountain of chocolates in front of him. Giving in to temptation, he devours them, noticing that the quality of the chocolate affects how much mana it restores. Larson realizes that sweets from a particular bakery also provide mana due to a shared ingredient. Curious, he calls for Hampton and orders him to fetch the baker immediately. 30 minutes later, the baker stands before Larson, trembling. Rumors about Larson's violent past have left him terrified. The baker assumes he's in trouble and begins apologizing profusely. Larson quickly reassures him, saying he hasn't done anything wrong. Instead, Larson demands the recipe for the sweets, wanting to know every ingredient. The baker nervously shares the recipe for his sweets. Larson immediately recognizes the key ingredient, the 1,000-year herb. Realizing this herb is what allows him to absorb so much mana, Larson becomes determined to incorporate it into his diet. The scene shifts to the training hall, where Noah hears from a healer that Larson beat up Carlin. Noah is stunned, calling Larson a lunatic, and wonders when he became so powerful. The mage speculates that Larson's sudden growth might be tied to the upcoming ceremony. Noah, however, remains skeptical. He points out that no matter how fast Larson improves through combat techniques, there are limits. Without mastering elemental spells, Larson will struggle to surpass the Grendels, the family known for their magic prowess. Despite this, Noah can't ignore Larson's unexpected rise. Back with Larson, he experiments with eating the 1,000-year herb. Unlike chocolate, which caused him to gain weight, the herb has no caloric downside. Instead, it boosts his mana reserves. Using his heavenly eye, Larson begins rapidly increasing his strength. Over the next 3 days, he processes the magical book he borrowed, reaching a significant milestone. Suddenly, a notification appears. A secret page from the great sage Alberto's technique has been unlocked. Intrigued, Larson wonders who the great sage is but realizes he'll need to revisit the library to learn more, a task he dreads due to Evian's unsettling presence. As Larson mulls this over, we see Hira silently observing him from the ceiling. The scene cuts to the library, where Larson nervously searches for Evian. She jump scares him, causing him to nearly drop the book he's returning. After she magically stores it away, she asks if he's looking for anything else. Larson hesitantly mentions the great sage Alberto's book. Evian warns him it's incomprehensible, but he insists he only wants to look at it for fun. Evian suddenly starts sniffing him, likening the moment to a predator assessing its prey. Larson awkwardly pulls out a chocolate bar, asking if that's what she smells. When he offers it to her, she initially declines, but then snatches it quickly, pretending she's being forced to accept it. Larson, baffled by her behavior, tries to leave but wonders how she'd react to a compliment. On impulse, he tells her she's welcome to visit the mansion for more chocolate, and he'll let Hira know. As he walks away, he thinks to himself that he hopes she doesn't actually come. Later, Larson begins reading the great sage's book, but it's less exciting than he anticipated. The text is filled with bizarre claims, making the process slow and tedious. He's 42% through the book, but the unpredictability of its content frustrates him. Outside, Hira and Hampton observe Larson running laps. Hampton comments on Larson's recent changes, while Hira notes that his workout doesn't seem normal. Suddenly, Evian appears behind them, explaining that Larson is melting mana by exercising. Both are startled by her sudden presence. When Hampton asks if they should tell Larson, Evian says there's no need. Hampton, realizing her rank as a high-ranking mage, grows uneasy since librarians are supposed to remain neutral in the Succession War. Evian remarks on how different Larson is from the rumors, and Hira nervously offers her chocolate, recalling Larson's instructions. She expects Evian to be insulted, but instead Evian eagerly takes the chocolate, leaving Hira confused. Hira begins to wonder what exactly happened between Larson and Evian. 3 days later, Larson finishes analyzing the great sage's book. As he absorbs the final contents, an intense sensation brings him to his knees. His heart feels like it's about to explode. Panicked, Larson realizes he must read the mana flow with his heavenly eye to avoid fatal errors. He's shocked to discover that misinterpreting the book could kill him. With sheer focus, he manages to engrave the teachings into his mind. The knowledge reveals a backstory of the world that was previously hidden to him. Larson begins to understand the unpredictability of this world, and Evian's strange behavior. It's revealed that she has an intense love for chocolate. This jogs a memory of Larson's past life, where he once watched a friend's son scribble nonsense into a backstory notebook. Now, Larson realizes that even absurd details can have meaning. Suddenly, a voice interrupts his thoughts. "It's useless for someone like you to concentrate." Larson looks up to find himself surrounded by fire. Strangely, the flames don't burn. As he scans the area, he sees a mysterious figure emerge from the blaze. The scene opens with Larson being startled by a voice calling out, asking if he has a death wish. Enter Persia, his sister, known for her 3 elemental attributes and her terrifying reputation. Larson immediately wonders why she's here. Persia doesn't waste time, bluntly asking if she should cut him up. We learn she despises weakness and has a gruesome hobby of literally cutting people apart. Persia grows annoyed at Larson's silence, pressing him for a response. He considers apologizing, but quickly realizes that would be the wrong move. It's likely a test. Thinking fast, he explains he wasn't pretending to concentrate, carefully continuing his explanation. Persia laughs, noting that the rumors about his recent changes might be true. Larson, seizing the moment, tells her he's trying to live as a decent person from now on. Persia scoffs, saying it's far too late for that. She summons a fire snake that coils around Larson, taunting him that when something is too late, it's really too late. Feeling the heat intensify, Larson keeps his composure. He admits he knows he can't become the patriarch because he understands his limits. Instead, he offers to help someone else claim the position. Intrigued, Persia tells him to keep talking. Larson continues, calling himself an unexpected variable. Persia, unimpressed, questions whether he'd even be useful. He replies that it depends on who chooses to use him. She presses further, asking who he supports, and Larson mentions their sister Evilia, subtly pointing out that Persia fears her. The fire snake hisses as its heat escalates, making Larson feel like he's about to burn alive. Persia dismisses him as cute for trying but accuses him of talking nonsense. Larson counters firmly, saying he knows she hates lies, and while he may submit to honor, he won't bow to power. The flames vanish. Persia, now amused, calls him an idiot and tosses a ball at his stomach. Larson looks down, realizing it's not just a ball, it's an apple. Inspecting it with his heavenly eye, he discovers it's a Carson, a rare mana elixir. Persia smirks, telling him she found it on the floor and orders him to eat it. Larson is stunned, realizing the Carson is an invaluable gift. He reflects that, as the youngest of the maiden family, he's lucky to receive such opportunities. However, he notes that Casson, the novel's protagonist, likely has no need for a Carson due to his overwhelming power. Still, this moment puts Larson at an advantage. The focus shifts to Persia as she reflects on Larson's unexpected growth. She acknowledges his ability to form a first circle through self-study and notes his slyness and fearlessness. While she's impressed, she declares that he'll never reach the level needed to become patriarch. She summons her shadow, Sando, instructing her to spread more bad rumors about Larson to keep him from meeting their siblings. Persia adds that Sando should watch him closely. If he eats the Carson, he might survive, but if not, she'll cut off his limbs. Persia also wants to ensure no one knows she gave it to him, as it could spark complications. Meanwhile, Larson examines the Carson. A warning pops up, stating that overconsumption could kill him. To safely absorb it, he'll need the help of a mage skilled in water, ice, or wind magic. Larson wonders about Persia's motives. Does she want him indebted to her? Or was it pure curiosity? Either way, he knows one thing for sure. If he doesn't eat it, Persia will follow through on her threats. As Larson debates his options, Evian approaches his door. He realizes hiding the Carson is pointless. She's likely already sensed its mana. Deciding to face the situation head-on, he invites her in. Larson admits that she must have detected the Carson and explains that he doesn't want to hide it. Instead, he proposes a deal. He needs her help to consume it safely. Evian reminds him of her role as a librarian, emphasizing that she must remain neutral and cannot involve herself in the succession war. Larson quickly clarifies that his request has nothing to do with the war. He's solely focused on committing himself to magic and improving his skills as a mage. Evian tilts her head, commenting on how much he sounds like a model mage. She mentions the bad rumors circulating about him, but Larson brushes them off. He reiterates that he has no intention of joining the succession war. Evian smirks, pointing out that children of the maiden family usually dedicate their entire lives to becoming patriarchs. Larson insists to Evian that his request has nothing to do with the succession war. He simply wants to grow stronger. Evian reminds him that as a librarian, she cannot get involved and advises him to seek help from a maiden family mage. Larson shakes his head, admitting he doesn't trust them, and pleads sincerely for her help. He explains his wish to protect his mother. This catches Evian off guard, stirring a memory of witnessing a mother sacrifice her life for her son after he defended her. It's revealed that this experience was what drove Evian to kill the king mentioned earlier. Softening slightly, she remarks on Larson's difficult life, pointing out how he's been monitored constantly and abandoned by his family. Despite this, he had to put on an act to lower his value. She acknowledges his dream of caring for his mother, but notes how difficult it is in a family where strength reigns supreme, and Larson is seen as a scoundrel of lowly birth. Still, she adds, dreams don't always have to be fulfilled to have value. Even chasing a dream can be meaningful. Finally, she agrees to help, clarifying it's not because of the chocolates. Larson smiles, genuinely grateful. The scene shifts to Evian preparing the Carson. She explains the risks. His body could freeze, possibly for months or even years, or in the worst case, he could die. Larson is unnerved by her calm tone, but trusts her expertise as a capable mage. As she prepares the process, she casually reminds him of her fee, 24 chocolates. Larson, knowing he has no other choice, agrees. Meanwhile, a bloodied Persia questions Sando about Larson's progress. Sando informs her that Evian assisted Larson with consuming the Carson. Shocked, Persia asks how Larson managed to convince the librarian, wondering if he knows Evian's true name, Larvian. Sando explains that the Carson was a special grade elixir, and without someone of Evian's caliber, Larson would have died. She adds that Larson's body has become incredibly sturdy as a byproduct, surprising even Evian. Moreover, his absorption speed was unusually fast. Persia, taken aback, remarks that consuming such a powerful Carson usually takes 3 years, but Larson might finish in just 3 weeks. Back at the mansion, Larson is running laps, marveling at how his body feels overflowing with mana. He's not even tired after hours of running. Turning to Hampton, he requests to be taken to the waterfall garden. Once there, Larson begins climbing the waterfall, reasoning that the additional exertion will consume more mana. To increase the challenge, he asks Hampton to fetch a lead weight for him. As Larson climbs, his magic techniques activate to protect his body, steadily upgrading with each attempt. Over the following weeks, he gradually increases the weight, even as Hampton warns him not to push himself too hard. Larson brushes off the concern, noting how energized he feels despite barely sleeping. The scene cuts to Sando reporting back to Persia. She informs her that Larson has fully absorbed the Carson's mana and now possesses a monstrous body. Persia listens intently, surprised to hear that Larson has been climbing the waterfall daily while carrying 50 kilograms. Confused, Persia asks if Sando meant 5 kilograms. Sando confirms it's 50, and adds that Larson climbs quickly, which leaves Persia stunned. She mutters that he's overflowing with vitality, but wonders how long his body can sustain such extreme mana levels. Sando explains that if left unchecked, Larson will die in 3 months. His body is holding too much mana. Without his special powers protecting him, he would have already exploded. However, she notes that if Persia intervenes, there's a chance he might survive. Persia sighs, calling the situation troublesome. She decides to wait and watch for now, adding that if it looks like Larson is near death, they'll need to investigate how he managed to get Evian's help. Back with Larson, he reflects on how much he's changed after absorbing the Carson's mana. In a serene moment, he's seen drinking tea with his mother. She comments on his dramatic weight loss and asks if he's overdoing it. Larson reassures her that it's just from exercising and insists he's perfectly healthy. She smiles, reminding him that while it's good to look fit, his health is what truly matters. Larson nods, assuring her he feels better than ever. The scene begins with Larson's mother complimenting Hira, the maid, which makes Hira visibly happy. She returns the compliment, and Larson feels relieved that his mother and Hira get along so well. He also notices that the blue dot illness on his mother has faded significantly, which adds to his growing optimism. Later, we find Larson lying in bed, thinking aloud about the date. He mentions that it's an important birthday, but more importantly, someone named Lydia will arrive at the West Gate. Lydia, known as the Crimson Butcher and the One-Armed Sorceress, is from the Tribe of Fire. Larson recalls that she'll run into trouble and be thrown out of the West Gate, only to encounter his sister Persia. That's how she ends up losing her arm and becoming one of Cassan's strongest allies. With her fire magic and Cassan's contract with her tribe, they dominate the battlefield. Larson decides that if he can intercept Lydia, he might claim one of the artifacts that would otherwise end up in Cassan's hands. As Larson strategizes, he senses someone in stealth nearby. Realizing it's Persia's shadow, he decides to act oblivious and tries to deactivate his heavenly eye, but it won't turn off. With no other choice, he pretends to sleep. Persia's shadow misinterprets the situation, believing he's cultivating mana even in his sleep, something that requires intense focus and could kill someone if done incorrectly. Yet, Larson appears to be doing it effortlessly. She's baffled by his stability, noting how his fused mana is gathering in his heart and stabilizing further. She's amazed that his heart is abnormally strong despite his physical transformation. Eventually, Larson stops pretending to sleep, and the scene shifts outside. He instructs Hira and Hampton to follow him, telling them they're headed to the West Gate. As they walk, Larson explains that the West Gate is the outermost gate of the mansion grounds. Today, he plans to meet Lydia. At the gate, Lydia is seen panting, surrounded by guards. She yells at them, threatening to kill them, her hand glowing with fire magic. Larson observes the chaos and wonders if he's already too late. Reading her character information, he's reminded of how hastily he wrote her personality and regrets not giving her more depth. Hampton asks what Lydia is doing, but Larson has no time to explain. He orders Hampton to scatter paralyzing poison and ensures it hits Lydia. Hampton tosses the bag, which bursts into a fine powder above Lydia's head. She collapses to the ground. One of the gatekeepers blocks Larson, demanding to know who he is. Larson, unimpressed, berates the guard, calling him incapable for not recognizing him. When the gatekeeper presses him for identification, Hampton steps in. With confidence, he introduces Larson as the 7th son of the Maiden family. The gatekeeper scoffs, claiming they're lying because everyone knows Larson is ugly. Larson calmly asks for the guard's name, promising to remember it. He challenges the guard, asking if anyone would dare impersonate someone as infamous as him, known as a scoundrel and an ugly pig. Larson tells the gatekeeper to send someone to verify his identity with the main family if he doubts him. However, if the guard continues acting arrogant and refuses to listen, Larson assures him there will be consequences. Realizing his mistake, the gatekeeper falls to his knees, apologizing profusely. He then nervously asks why Larson wants to take the girl. Larson, caught without a plan, improvises. He bluntly says Lydia is attractive, leaving the gatekeeper stunned but compliant. Hira, however, looks utterly confused. The scene cuts to Lydia, now tied up, as everyone looks at her. A notification appears before Larson, warning that a new variable has been introduced due to the changes he made. Lydia wakes up, growling and barking through the tape over her mouth. Larson, unable to understand her muffled words, decides to approach her directly. He asks if her father is sick and tells her his mother is also ill, implying he understands why she's here. Larson explains that she's a mage from Hiron and part of the Tribe of Fire. He mentions the epidemic affecting her territory and guesses that she came here believing the maiden family has the cure. He asks if she understands, and Lydia nods. Larson signals for Hira to remove the tape from Lydia's mouth. As it's removed, Larson asks calmly if she's ready to talk. Lydia looks at Larson skeptically and asks if he's really going to help her. Larson reassures her that he already said he would. She presses further, questioning why a noble like him would help for free. Her father had always said nobles never do anything without expecting something in return. Larson asks why she came to him if she believed that, and Lydia hesitates before revealing that she has something valuable to offer. Larson instantly recognizes what she means. The Holy Grail of Fire, an artifact that would have ended up with Kassan in the original timeline. He tells her he'll cure her father, but warns that it will cost a lot of money. When Lydia admits she doesn't have any, Larson shrugs it off and says she can pay him back later. He'll calculate the cost after treating her father. Relieved, Lydia promises to repay him however she can, and even offers the valuable item she mentioned earlier. With the negotiation complete, Larson tells Hampton to spread thousand-year herb around Lydia's territory and boil it with silver seawater to create the cure for the epidemic. Hampton is puzzled, saying he's never heard of such medicine, but Larson brushes it off and tells him to trust the method. Impressed, Hampton agrees and begins to see Larson in a new light. Hira takes this moment to ask Larson how he knows about the medicine. Larson deflects the question by simply stating, "I'm a maiden." Hira hesitates, processing his words, and thanks him for the explanation. She even remarks that seeing him now reminds her of the patriarch when he was younger. Larson then turns to Lydia and tells her he'll release her. This angers Lydia, who snaps that she never told him her name and demands to know how he knew it. Realizing his slip-up, Larson quickly recovers, asking if it's really that strange he knows her name. She says it is. Larson doubles down, asking if it's strange he's using an expensive herb for her. Again, she says it is. Larson lists more examples, pointing out how he's sharing secrets of the maiden family and helping her at great personal risk. Lydia, increasingly flustered, keeps responding that it's all strange. Finally, Larson lands his point. She's showing hostility towards someone who might be her savior. Embarrassed, Lydia apologizes, and Larson makes her repeat it until she admits she was wrong. Satisfied, he tells her to stay put for now. When Lydia asks why, Larson reminds her that she attacked the maiden family. She explains that the gatekeepers told her this wasn't a place for lowly people and that it wouldn't matter if her father died. Enraged by their cruelty, she was ready to kill them all to protect her father. Larson listens and then calmly instructs Hira to untie her. Still suspicious, Lydia asks why Larson is treating her so kindly. He introduces himself, and it takes her a moment to connect the dots. Shocked, she asks if he's the Larson, the scoundrel everyone talks about. Larson smirks and asks if that's what the rumors say. Lydia nods, saying she expected him to be trash, but now she sees he's actually a good guy. A status window appears, notifying Larson of a new unexpected variable. He wonders if allying with Lydia is truly the right choice, but decides to observe her further. Back at the mansion, Hampton informs Larson that he's prepared the herbs and will leave for Hiron immediately. He estimates the journey will take 3 days. Before departing, Hampton asks why Larson helped Lydia. Larson explains that it's unfair for someone to die from a treatable illness, especially when it's her father. It cost him nothing to help. Moved, Hampton praises Larson, calling him the true light, before leaving. However, Larson's real motivation remains clear in his mind: the holy grail of fire. 2 days later, Persia arrives at the mansion. She sees Larson and barely recognizes him, asking who he is since no one in the Maiden family has ever looked this handsome. Larson tells her it's him, but Persia doesn't believe him at first. She grabs his face, examining him closely, and compliments his transformation. Larson's magic combat technique activates instinctively, surprising him. Even making eye contact with Persia triggers his body's defenses. Persia pats his head, telling him his face passes her test, and promises to pamper him if he keeps growing like this. Larson, wary, declines her offer, suspecting it's another test. He boldly tells her he'd rather become her rival or ally than be pampered. Persia chuckles darkly, saying he'd make a beautiful piece of art if she decorated his decapitated head. Larson quickly tells her to stop making such bad jokes, but Persia coldly replies that it wasn't a joke. Persia then demands to see the toy Larson brought back. Larson hesitates, knowing Persia dislikes other talented fire mages like Lydia. He tells her he doesn't plan to show her, but Persia's demeanor shifts. She releases a wave of killing intent, accusing Larson of overstepping his boundaries. Larson braces himself as Persia's mana exerts immense pressure on him. Using his combat technique, he manages to resist, earning a nod of approval from her. She withdraws her mana and smirks, offering him a chance. She proposes a duel. She'll fight using only one finger, no elemental magic, just combat techniques. Larson, surprised, asks if she's even familiar with combat techniques. Persia waves him off, saying she's read about them briefly. Larson smirks back, determined to give it his all. Persia compliments his confidence and conjures a fire snake. Larson's heavenly eye reveals the snake as an illusion, and he destroys it with a single punch. Persia claps mockingly, noting how much he's improved since their last encounter. She adds that if he wins, she'll leave his toy alone, but if he fails to entertain her, she'll destroy it. She taunts him, calling him the son their father discarded, never expecting him to grow this much. Larson leaps at her, but Persia easily deflects him with her finger, sending him skidding backward. He lands on his feet, shaken but determined. Realizing the gap between their abilities is too great for him to dodge and counter, Larson knows he needs a different strategy. His iron will protects his body, but even so, his mana is in chaos after just one hit. As his cultivation stabilizes his mana, he decides to aim for her leg. Seizing his chance, Larson grabs Persia's right leg and sweeps her other foot, causing her to fall. With a burst of mana, he channels all his strength into his fist and slams it toward her face. However, his fist shatters on impact, revealing her defensive magic. Persia, unfazed, asks if he attacked because she let her guard down. Larson admits it was his only opportunity. She chuckles, calling his technique unsightly, which is why she dislikes combat techniques. Larson retorts that while it wasn't elegant, he still won. Cradling his broken hand, he can't help but smirk. Persia doesn't take the loss lightly. She uses her magic to lift Larson and throws him into a wall, making him cough up blood. Despite this, she declares he won the bet and assures him she'll leave his toy alone. But she can't hide her growing interest in him. As Persia prepares to leave, she remarks on Larson's durability, noting she added some healing mana to her attack. If he uses it wisely, he could gain something valuable from it. Before vanishing into flames, she warns that if he misuses her gift, his body might fall apart. Her shadow, Sando, observes from nearby and comments on Persia's fascination with Larson. Persia admits he's intriguing, but insists she's only testing him. The scene shifts back to Larson, who is still coughing up blood. A status window appears, notifying him that he's fulfilled a special requirement, enlightening his self-recovery technique. Larson begins to recover, but another notification catches his attention. Body restructuring initiated. Confused, he barely has time to process before he's overwhelmed by excruciating pain. Larson screams as his body undergoes a terrifying transformation. His bones feel like they're being pulverized, and black goo leaks from his ears and other parts of his body. His fingers move uncontrollably as his techniques begin engraving themselves into his very being. The room fills with black powder, and Hira and Lydia burst in, alarmed by the scene. Hira examines the powder, initially suspecting poison, but dismisses the idea when she realizes it's too weak. She guesses it's waste material expelled during the transformation. Another status window appears, warning that the process requires a large amount of mana. Larson, desperate, realizes his mana reserves are dangerously low. If they run out, the process will stop, leaving him with severe side effects. Just as things look grim, Lydia steps forward, unleashing her flames. She tells Larson she'll help and directs her fire toward him. Larson begins absorbing the purified mana from her flames, stabilizing the process. With her help, the reconstruction is completed. A final status window announces, "Heavenly Body activated." Larson steps out of the flames, his physique transformed. He notices significant muscle growth and realizes the Heavenly Body is the same attribute Casson was born with. It's also one of the prerequisites for the Sword Emperor attribute, which Casson possessed. Larson wonders why he keeps inheriting things meant for Casson and resolves to hide this new attribute. Later, Lydia speaks with Hira about the results of Larson's efforts. She shares a letter from her father, thanking Larson for curing the epidemic. The villagers are recovering, and the crisis is fading. Overcome with emotion, Lydia wipes away a tear and approaches Larson, promising to repay his kindness. Declaring her loyalty, she offers to become his contractor. Larson recognizes the significance. This is the same contract of fire that Casson had with Lydia in the original timeline. Lydia explains that the contract of fire is a sacred promise her tribe members can only make once in their lives. It binds them entirely to the person they contract with, devoting their existence to their chosen contractor. Larson quickly realizes that accepting this contract would drastically alter the original story. Future Lydia, Casson's greatest ally, would no longer exist. But Larson isn't concerned about that. His priority is to break free of Casson's influence before he turns 17. When Lydia asks if he'll accept, Larson hesitates before agreeing. Lydia begins the Oath of Fire, and as Larson watches, a status window appears. It reveals new settings tied to the contract and grants him the authority of Berserk Restraint. Larson recalls how, in the novel, Lydia's berserk tendencies were a frequent problem because of her impulsive nature. Now, he has the power to control those rampages, but at a price. If he activates the restraint, Lydia could die. Troubled, Larson tells Lydia he doesn't want to use the restraint. Lydia, unfazed, calls it a good thing. Larson asks her how it could possibly be good, but she can't give him a convincing answer. Frustrated, Larson explains that she would essentially be sacrificing her life to him. Lydia, however, sees it as an honor. She insists it's cool and says she's fine with dying if it means being useful to him. Larson sternly tells her he doesn't want that outcome, but Lydia brushes off his concerns, promising it won't happen. He argues that she's only 9 and too young to make such a commitment. Lydia counters that her age doesn't matter. Larson disagrees, saying they're both too young to understand the full weight of the contract. Lydia pauses, then calls him a good person, echoing something her father once told her. She explains that her father said anyone who rejects the contract is trustworthy and should never be let go. The scene transitions to Lydia happily eating chocolate, marveling at how good it tastes. Larson takes the opportunity to ask about the valuable item she mentioned earlier. He's sure it's the Holy Grail of Fire. Lydia confirms that it's in her neighborhood, but admits she doesn't know its name. She only knows it's a cup. Larson uses his heavenly eye to analyze the artifact, learning that it grants immunity to poison, resistance to mind magic, and other benefits perfect for longevity. Deciding it's time to retrieve it, Larson announces they need to leave. Hira asks if he'll need an escort, reminding him that all maiden family members require one for official trips. Larson realizes this complicates things. Escorts are typically assigned to support his siblings' ambitions. After some thought, he decides on a solution. The scene cuts to Jaffel, a mage with a history of bad blood with Larson. When he hears Larson has chosen him as an escort, Jaffel is puzzled and suspicious. A flashback reveals a younger Larson cruelly calling Jaffel a dog, telling him he should obey his owner. Present-day Larson regrets those words, but knows he must move forward. Hira prepares the request form, asking what reason Larson wants to give for the trip. He casually tells her to write, to try their chocolate. She's skeptical, but the request is approved almost instantly. Jaffel arrives at the mansion, clearly irritated. Larson greets him politely, which only deepens Jaffel's suspicion. He comments on how much Larson has changed and directly asks why he was chosen as an escort. Larson doesn't mince words, reminding Jaffel that he once called him a dog and adding that a good guard dog should protect its owner. Jaffel bristles at the insult, but Larson continues, pointing out that among all the dogs, Jaffel is the most trustworthy. Jaffel, still angry, asks if Larson truly trusts him. Larson admits he doesn't trust Jaffel as a person, but trusts his ability as an escort. He elaborates, saying Jaffel is ambitious and has a history of switching loyalties, from Larson's fourth brother to his second sister. Larson suggests Jaffel could be useful to him someday, shocking Jaffel by revealing he knows of his plan to shift loyalty again. Jaffel denies any allegiances, insisting he's just an escort. Larson dismisses this, stating that loyalty doesn't matter as long as Jaffel fulfills his duty. As a maiden family member, Larson orders Jaffel to protect him. Reluctantly, Jaffel accepts, though he's curious about Larson's dramatic transformation. As they begin their journey, Lydia beams with excitement about seeing her father. Larson explains to her that while her tribe once held immense power, the god they worshipped expended its energy long ago, leaving them weakened. Suddenly, Lydia inhales deeply and lets out a deafening scream,